Hi, my name is Michael, and I was once an urban exploration enthusiast. If you've never heard of it, here's a quick explanation. In every city or town, there are countless abandoned hidden places that most people don't even know exist. Old disused train stations, miles of intricate tunnels, even massive water reservoirs. Urban exploration is the act of seeking out and exploring such places. I started when I was 17, and since then I've been completely hooked. Fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, now I'll have to spend the rest of my life hiding in the underbelly of this city, hunted by a ruthless government that likely wants me dead to ensure my silence. The man who went through this horror with me, whom I only know as Rodriguez, is sitting beside me. He too will spend the rest of his life in hiding, a silent witness and ally. As I write these lines, I don't expect to ever forget what I've seen that will never happen. The best I can hope for is that after reading this one day, you'll see the truth too. So let's begin. It all started when I left home one morning filled with excitement. I'd gotten a tip from a friend, also an urban explorer, about an old abandoned complex deep beneath the city. She sounded thrilled about her discovery, which I could hardly believe. She was a far more experienced explorer than me, so for her to be this excited, this place had to be something truly special. She told me it looked like some kind of abandoned semi-military facility, left untouched for God knows how long. Possibly a resistance hideout from World War II, she speculated, as if I needed more reason to check it out. I brought my usual gear, a flashlight, a coil of rope, a first aid kit. I wasn't expecting any trouble, but being prepared is always wise. I descended from the surface through a rusty, unassuming hatch door and spent the next hour walking, climbing, and in some places crawling through a series of ducts, chutes, and passageways tangled with cables. Clearly, this wasn't the official entrance to wherever I was headed. It was a makeshift infiltration route. Instantly, I was captivated. Finally, I slid down from a grimy ventilation shaft, raised my flashlight, and looked around in awe. My friend hadn't exaggerated. This place was a dream for any urban explorer. I was in a large circular room with 4 passageways, clearly some kind of junction. Narrow tunnels branched out in the 4 cardinal directions. All but one sloped upward. The remaining one led downward steeply. The floor was covered in a thick layer of dust interrupted by waist-high concrete blocks, with shallow trenches dug behind each one. Looking back on these events, I realize one thing: those concrete blocks were clearly meant for taking cover. They all faced the solitary passageway leading downward. Whoever built this place wasn't preparing to defend against an attack from the surface, but from below ground. In my excitement, somehow I overlooked this fact. After snapping a photo of the surroundings, I continued down one of the passageways. Naturally, I chose the one leading downward. The corridor stretched about half a mile before ending at a large iron door with a circular iron handle in the center. I grabbed it and pulled. At first it wouldn't budge, but after a few strong tugs, it swung open with a piercing screech of rusty hinges. On the other side was another room, this time with only one corridor, once again leading downward. I let out a breath. The center of the room was dominated by a wide wall of stacked sandbags. Several heavy machine guns, the kind you'd see in trench warfare scenes, were mounted on top, all pre-aimed at the downward leading corridor. I stepped closer, fumbling for my phone. This was unprecedented in my explorations. Abandoned old subway stations were one thing. Machine gun nests were another entirely. As I approached, I frowned in confusion. The floor was covered in a thick layer of dust, but around the sandbags, large boot prints had disturbed the grime. I crouched to look closer. These footprints were fresh, no more than a few days old. Clearly, someone had been maintaining this place recently. I shone my flashlight on the tracks which led into the darkness of the downward corridor. A small pang of doubt tugged at me. Someone was using these tunnels. Could it be my friend? No, that couldn't be. She would have told me if she'd found something like this. Besides, if these were her footprints, they would have come from the surface. I should have turned back then. Why didn't I? Some damned curiosity, the thrill of discovering something new, stopped me from doing the sensible thing. I stood there like an idiot, staring at my strange find. A half-heard sound ahead made me look up. I caught a fleeting glimpse of movement, a dark shape shifting at the corridor's entrance before everything descended into chaos. A blinding flash turned my vision into white fire. A sound like thunder roared everywhere, unrelenting. I was blind and deaf. Far away, as if in a dream, I felt myself hit the ground under the sensory assault. A second and seemingly a century later, the attack on my senses stopped. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard boots stomping closer. Someone shouted in the white haze my vision had become. There was a loud bang, and something struck the concrete right beside my neck. I'm being shot at, I thought numbly. Cease fire! Another voice bellowed, deep and authoritative. I'm not getting anything on the spectrum. It's not one of them. What if it's a vampire? A third voice asked. Vampires don't get caught off guard like this. He's a civilian. Get the gun out of his face. Jesus Christ! What's a civilian doing down here, Rodriguez? I don't know, the commanding voice said again. Grab him. He's coming with us. Rough hands seized me. I swung blindly at their owner and missed. A second later, something with the force of a sledgehammer hit my face. I staggered, dazed from the blow. Before I could recover, a coarse sack was pulled over my head. I screamed. Another blow. Don't resist. The voice boomed again. If you do, I'm authorized to use lethal force to neutralize you. Please, I started. You will stay silent. You will not resist. You will come with us. Nod if you understand. My mind raced, adrenaline and panic overwhelming me. I was blind, miles underground, surrounded by armed men. In less than a minute, this trip had gone from exciting to terrifying. I nodded silently. Take him up, the voice ordered. Someone yanked me to my feet and led me forward, stumbling and blind, deeper underground. At first, I tried to stay calm, memorizing the distance and directions we traveled. If I somehow escaped these people, whoever they were, I'd need to retrace my steps to find my way back to the surface. But soon, I gave up. The disorienting, suffocating darkness of the sack made it impossible to maintain any sense of direction. Once, after half an hour of silently stumbling through the dark, I tried pleading with my captors. Please, I began. I don't know anything. I couldn't finish. A hand clamped over my mouth, nearly suffocating me through the thick fabric. You will stay silent at all times. This is for your safety and that of my men. If you endanger us again, I'll be forced to neutralize the threat you pose. I shut my mouth quickly. Another indeterminate amount of time passed. I don't know how far we went or how long it took when suddenly a loud electronic beep broke the silence of our footsteps. I heard one of my captors curse under their breath. Damn it, I've got a reading 100 meters ahead and closing. There was a soft click of weapons being drawn. A hand pushed down on my back, forcing me flat on the ground. I felt someone's hot breath by my ear. Whatever you do, stay absolutely silent. It was the man they called Rodriguez. Don't move. Breathe lightly. Unless you want to be found, and trust me, you don't want to be found. The beeping grew more urgent, higher pitched. 50 meters, someone said. Kill the lights, lower the volume. The beeping stopped. No, I could still hear it, but muffled, barely audible, coming from a headset. It was getting faster, more frantic. Breathe lightly. Unless you want to be found. The shallow breaths of my captors and the pounding of blood in my ears suddenly seemed as loud as a storm. For a few terrifying seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, just ahead, one of the soldiers screamed. The air exploded with the sound of gunfire. It was a relentless hammering as my captors unloaded their weapons, reloaded, and fired again. Flashes of light pierced through my hood. The smell of gunpowder choked my throat. I nearly screamed. The barrage stopped as quickly as it began. There was a click as someone slapped a new magazine into their rifle. Movement negative. Spectrum clear. It's either dead or gone. Get the civilian up. We need to move before more of them come. I was yanked to my feet. This time, we didn't walk down the corridor, we ran. Strong arms propped me up whenever I stumbled. Finally, just when I thought I couldn't take any more, we stopped. There was the grinding of iron hinges. Through the black sack over my head, I could hear voices, the hum of machinery, the bustle of activity. The air changed, becoming warmer, more crowded. Somehow I knew I was in a vast room, or perhaps a cavern. I was led again up a steep staircase and along some passageway. A door creaked open and closed behind me. Without warning, the sack was pulled off my head. I squinted at the sudden light. I looked around, equal parts, astonished, terrified, and confused. I was standing in some kind of large office. Maps and reports were pinned to gray concrete walls. A heavy steel desk dominated the center of the room. Behind it, mounted on the wall, was a massive electronic screen displaying a complex map of corridors, rooms, and caverns. Numerous points on the map glowed green while others flashed a menacing red. A man stood behind the desk. He was tall and burly with salt and pepper hair, dressed in combat fatigues and a black vest. A pistol was holstered at his waist. Before I could say anything, he held out his hand. "My name is Major Rogers. I apologize for the rough treatment you've received, but unfortunately it was entirely necessary." Utterly confused, I took the offered hand and shook it weakly. "Matthew Daniels," I said. Rogers smiled at me, though it was a strained expression. "I'm sure you have many questions, but I'm afraid I can't answer any of them. In fact, it's best if you forget everything you've seen and heard here." I began. "Please take a moment to collect your thoughts," Rogers said. "There are some matters we must discuss, and it's best if you're clear-headed before we start." I swallowed the 1,000 questions I was thinking, forcing my racing mind to stop and assess. "What is this place?" I finally asked. "That's classified," Rogers replied. "What the hell is going on?" I said, injecting a bit of anger into my voice. "That's also classified. As I said, I can't tell you anything." "So, what's going to happen to me?" Rogers sighed. "I'm afraid you'll have to stay here for a while, possibly even a few days. I don't have the authority to decide what to do with you. We've notified command about your presence and someone higher up will be here soon. My guess, you'll sign enough non-disclosure agreements to bury yourself, then you'll be given a new identity and relocated somewhere no one knows who you are." I reeled. This was insane. This couldn't be real. You can't do this," I whispered in disbelief. "I have rights. I'm afraid none of that matters down here. Not in this war." I jumped up my chair, crashing behind me. "You bastard, let me go." The door opened behind us. A cold-faced woman holding a pistol peered inside. My heart sank. "Everything all right, sir?" "Yes," Sergeant Rogers said calmly. "Please leave us alone." The woman glanced at me, shrugged, and closed the door. I slumped back into my chair, defeated. "I understand this is hard to accept. I'll have my men escort you to temporary quarters where you can gather your thoughts. Then we—" Without warning, an alarm wailed, drowning out the major's words. He spun around. On the screen behind him, the green lights were rapidly turning red across the map, all converging on one spot. From outside the office, I heard frantic activity snippets of reports and desperate orders. Spectrum 12 to 47 activated. I'm detecting movement in all western tunnels. This is Camp Delta. Requesting immediate. Rogers grabbed a microphone from the desk, flicked it on, and brought it to his lips. "Code Black." I repeat. "Code Black," he said, his voice taut. "The defensive perimeter has been breached. They're coming." Part 2. As I try to recall the fall of Camp Delta, two things stand out in my memory. Only the knowledge of the truth and Rodriguez's silent urging keep me writing. The first thing that stands out is the terrifying speed with which the defenses were overwhelmed. The other is the first time I saw one of the creatures from below. Major Rogers barreled past me, pistol in hand. He shoved the office door open and ran out, shouting orders. After a second's hesitation, I followed. I didn't know what was happening, but somehow I knew staying put meant death. Running out the door, I got my first glimpse of Camp Delta. I was in a massive cavern hundreds of meters wide or more, lit by industrial lights embedded in the high stone ceiling. Tunnels and passageways branched off in every direction, each surrounded by a series of defensive positions. Bunkers, machine gun nests, foxholes. Soldiers in black fatigues scrambled chaotically trying to reach their posts in time. An alarm wailed incessantly uselessly. The gunfire started without warning. In an instant, hundreds of weapons opened fire. Tracer rounds streaked into the darkness of the branching tunnels. The muzzle flashes created a frenetic light show, casting sharp, distorted shadows on the walls. I couldn't see what they were shooting at, and then I did. To be brutally honest, that's a lie. I never truly saw the things that burst from the tunnels and tore Camp Delta to pieces. They moved too fast, or perhaps they didn't truly exist, or maybe I never saw them, only shapes at the edge of my vision, fleeting glimpses and hints at the periphery. A shadow lunged from one of the tunnels. No, not a shadow, just the memory of a shadow, the tattered outline of a nightmare. A soldier was torn apart, blood spraying from dozens of wounds, and the creature was gone, leaving death in its wake. It wasn't alone. They weren't there, and yet they were everywhere, flickering out of the darkness, and the strobing light of gunfire, elusive as smoke, slaughtering like blades. I stood in the midst of this chaos, dumbfounded, unable to move. My mind seemed to have frozen, incapable of even the smallest act of self-preservation. A soldier ran past me, stopped and turned back. An explosion flared behind her, silhouetting her as a black outline against red. "Get down, damn it!" She screamed at me, her face inches from mine, shouting over the deafening gunfire. "Get down if you want to live!" She gestured to the side, pointing at a wide, half-full rectangular trash bin leaning against the wall. I stared at her mouth, agape, not even comprehending her words. She slapped me across the face, and it snapped me out of my stupor. I ran to the bin and lifted its hinged lid. Something red and bleeding fell toward me. I pushed it away, jumped inside, and slammed the lid shut. And then, there are no more memories. I don't know how long I cowered in that filthy hiding place, maybe minutes, maybe hours. The sound of gunfire outside grew fainter, quieter, then stopped entirely. Then there were only desperate screams, and then nothing at all, just darkness and terror. Slowly, my mind returned to me. I shivered in my hiding place, both from fear and cold. The temperature was dropping by the minute. I couldn't hear anything from outside. Could I move? Could I risk it? Whatever had burst from the tunnels, those creatures from below had ravaged Camp Delta in mere minutes. If even one of them was still out there, I'd be dead the moment I left my hiding place. But what if they could hear me or smell me cowering in the filth? I had no idea of their capabilities or what senses they might possess. Suddenly, the bin no longer felt like a safe haven, but a death trap. Every second I stayed there could bring me closer to those creatures that moved like a butcher's blade and torn silk. I made my decision. Moving was better than staying still. I had only a vague plan in mind: find a gun, maybe a flashlight, and head into the tunnels. It wasn't much, but it was better than staying put. There had to be a map somewhere in Roger's office. I'd find it, and then brave the tunnels back to the surface somehow. Naively, my hope clung to that notion: if I reached the surface, I'd be safe. Slowly, carefully, I eased the bin's lid open, wincing at every creak the protesting hinges made in the deadly silence of Camp Delta. Every single sound seemed amplified to unimaginable heights. Finally, the lid was open wide enough for me to slip out. The cavern was almost pitch black. Whatever generators had powered the base were long destroyed. The only light came from dim red emergency lights set into the walls, bathing everything in an ominous crimson hue. I jumped to the ground and landed in something wet. I looked down and nearly vomited. Camp Delta had been the site of a massacre. Corpses littered the ground, most torn apart, mercilessly shredded. I'd landed in a pool of viscera. I doubled over, retching. Not 10 steps away, I saw the woman who'd told me to hide. Both her arms and half her face were gone, her white bones glistening wetly. I choked, barely able to control my stomach. Focus, I told myself. Don't look at them. Gun, flashlight, map. Focus. Trying not to look down, I crept through the wreckage of Camp Delta. Every shadow and small sound was filled with terror. With every passing second, I expected to feel invisible claws sink into my back, tearing me to pieces in less time than it took to scream. The staircase to Roger's office loomed ahead. I moved up it slowly, wincing at the loud creak my footsteps produced. It seemed to echo through the cavern like thunder. At one point, I stopped, certain I'd heard something moving in the debris of the battle below. For a minute, I stood frozen, half-crouched, ready to dive into the darkness at the slightest sign of danger. Nothing. There was nothing. I had to keep moving. Slowly, I reached the top of the staircase and crept down the passageway to my destination. All I needed was to get inside, and then a voice. I froze. Every sense I had was stretched to its limit, every muscle tensed and ready to flee. They were back. A barely audible whisper came from behind the closed door leading to Roger's office. Move as soon as possible. They'll come back, that's for sure, and we can't stay here waiting for more survivors to find us. But where do we go? Who's to say Camp Gamma hasn't been overrun? The same goes for Beta and Alpha. We don't know what's happening up there. All our comms are dead. The first voice returned. If Alpha's been taken, we've lost the war. If we push to the surface, it'll give us a chance to survive at least. Staying here is suicide. A new voice. The third. Does anyone know what happened to the Major? A pause. The Major's dead, someone said. I saw it happen. He's gone. God damn it. We can mourn later. Right now we need to move. They'll be back soon, and the tunnels will be crawling with vampires. Yeah, you're right. Time to move. Through the door, I heard footsteps. Damn it, I thought. Panic surged, threatening to choke me. I backed away, desperate to get away from the door and hide. In my haste, I forgot to move quietly. My foot slammed heavily on the metal staircase. I froze. The sounds from inside stopped. The door swung open, and dark shapes moved within, bristling with weapons. A flashlight stabbed into me, blindingly white. Don't fucking move, someone hissed. Hands on your head. Now I obeyed. The shapes advanced, resolving into a squad of 7 soldiers in dark combat fatigues, all armed to the teeth. They pointed their guns at me, closing in. Who are you? One of them, said a man with black hair, a goatee, and angry eyes. He stepped closer, raising the barrel of his rifle to my face. I'm Matthew Daniels, I stammered. I'm not one of you. I'm a civilian. Please, There's no such thing as a civilian in Camp Delta. The soldier cut me off. He half-turned to his squad. He's a goddamn vampire. We should shoot him and be done with it. He's telling the truth. Anderson, a familiar voice said. Rodriguez. I recognized one of the men who'd captured me. I was there when we found him. Somehow he found his way into one of the auxiliary tunnels. Anderson stared at me, clearly unconvinced. Lower your weapons. He's not a threat, Rodriguez repeated. Slowly, reluctantly, the soldiers complied. What do we do with him? Someone asked. I started. Leave him, Anderson growled, cutting me off. He's just a burden. A civilian won't last 5 minutes down here. We can't just leave him down here, someone said. You're right. He won't last 5 minutes without us. It's as good as a death sentence, like shooting him right here. And we don't shoot him, Anderson said. I began again, only for another soldier to interrupt. Camp Gamma's half a day's journey. He can keep up for that long. We'll see about it then. Anderson muttered, half to himself. Fine, settled. Then, Rodriguez said, the civilian comes with us. The entire squad looked at me. I nodded weakly, my head spinning. All right, time to move, Rodriguez said. The group moved past me, weapons half raised. For a second, I stood stunned. Everything was moving too fast for me to keep up. Rodriguez turned back and raised an eyebrow. You coming? Finally, I nodded and followed him. Our group crept through the wreckage of Camp Delta and entered a steeply ascending passageway. We were a line of swaying flashlights illuminating the darkness with cones of light. Occasionally, we reached a junction. At those moments, the lead soldier would consult her map, exchange a few whispered words with 1 or 2 teammates, then silently head down one of the corridors. I'm guessing you have a lot of questions, Rodriguez whispered to me as we crept through the dark. That's an understatement, I muttered. Major Rogers said he couldn't tell me anything. The situation's changed a bit, hasn't it? Rodriguez replied. If we're going to get out of here alive, we'll need all the help we can get. I'm pretty sure my superiors won't be happy about it, but given the mess this whole operation's become, I'm fairly certain I can afford to spill a few secrets to you. I stayed silent. Rodriguez continued. There's a massive network of tunnels beneath this entire region. It stretches for miles and it goes down very, very deep. There are things living in those tunnels. The official name is USL Unclassified Subterranean Lifeforms, but we usually call them the things from below. We don't know what they are or where they came from. All we know is they want out and we can't let that happen. I think I saw one of them when Camp Delta fell, I said. Well, I didn't exactly see it. Just movement. No one's ever seen one? Rodriguez replied. We've never had a confirmed visual. We've never found a body or caught them on video. You can barely see them, just glimpses at the edge of your vision or a blur of motion before they strike. Like your gaze slides off them every time you try to look closely. So how do you fight them? Rodriguez rummaged in his tactical vest and pulled out a small black box the size of his palm. Several wires led from it, one to the headset he was wearing. We use these babies. We call them spectrums, though I don't know what wavelengths or emissions they actually pick up. They can detect the things from below, give you their rough direction and distance in the tunnels. That's enough. You point your gun ahead at where they're supposed to be and pray to God they don't get close enough for you to catch a glimpse. And if they do, you shoot and hope you hit. Quantity of firepower matters as much as quality with these things. Everyone in a squad will unload a full magazine on auto, sometimes two, just to be sure. We don't know if bullets actually hurt them, but if you're lucky, they'll vanish, retreat, or die, or whatever it is they do when hit with our firepower. That's why we have to contain this, keep it in the tunnels. If they ever reach the surface, it's over. You can't fight them in the open. So you don't know where they are, where they came from, or even if you can actually kill them. I said, my head spinning. How long has this been going on? Rodriguez gave a bitter laugh. Generations. We don't know how many, but the rumor is Anderson's grandfather was stationed here. His father, too. Might explain why he's so cranky. This is the first time I've known of those things launching an attack like this. It's always been ambushes in the tunnels picking off patrol units and stragglers. Wait. Anderson's grandfather fought here. That means this war's been going on since Stalin breathed his last, maybe longer. I cursed under my breath. Rodriguez smiled wryly. Until now, the war was a stalemate. They couldn't get out, but we couldn't advance an inch. Once a scout patrol went deep into the tunnels miles down into an area we call the Pit of Sorrow. The only radio report we ever got from them mentioned some kind of structure down there. A temple, but we've never been able to confirm it. I walked silently for a while, letting it all sink in. When you captured me, someone mentioned vampires. I finally said. They thought I was one. Oh, right, Rodriguez replied. I forgot about those. Sometimes a patrol unit or a small camp goes missing. Sometimes those people are found dead. Sometimes they come back, but changed. I think they worship the things from below. The tunnels are crawling with them. They're fast, they're strong, and they can hide almost anywhere. The spectrums don't pick them up, so you have to stay sharp. I looked up and saw our group had stopped at a junction. The lead soldier was checking her map again. Mulling over Rodriguez's words, I felt a wave of horror rising inside me. It was like I was suffocating, drowning in my own fear. What am I supposed to do? I asked him, the words coming out as a choked whisper. Everything's happening too fast. Can we even hope to survive this? Rodriguez placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Stay sharp and try to stay as quiet as possible. We'll get you through the rest. I looked up to thank him. The shadow standing silently behind Rodriguez opened its eyes and smiled. Part 3. Guns, snapped-up reflexes honed by a lifetime of training. These men and women were bred for this war, trained for it, their entire lives. Yet the vampire was faster. It lunged forward, slamming into Rodriguez and knocking him to the ground. The first shots fired missed, crisscrossing the air above the struggling figures. Rodriguez kicked out, catching it in the midsection. The vampire rolled backward, folding itself into a patch of darkness and suddenly vanishing. "Light it up," Anderson roared. "Back to back, light it up." The group snapped into formation. I pressed in beside Rodriguez. He was breathing heavily, each labored breath shaking his body. "You okay?" I asked. "The bastard tried to stab me," he growled. My Kevlar stopped it, but just barely. We stood back to back, guns pointed outward, piercing the darkness with flashlights. A voice came from the shadows, seeming to emanate from multiple directions at once. A shiver ran down my spine. It was just a low hiss, but every syllable carried a mad promise of bloodshed. "Oh, my beautiful ones," it moaned. "So lonely in the dark, so lost. Let me take just one of you to the temple and I'll continue my journey." "God damn it, that's Cowie," a soldier muttered. "I know him. He went missing in action 6 months ago," Anderson muttered. Then, louder, addressing the shadows around us. "Cowie, I don't want to kill you. If there's anything left of the soldier I once knew, come out or leave us be. Don't make us hurt you." Instead of a reply, a patch of darkness above us suddenly dropped. A glinting blade flashed in the light, and a soldier fell to the ground, blood gushing from a slashed throat. The group opened fire flashes, illuminating the scene. Cowie was there, a gaunt skeleton of a man in tattered clothes under the strobing light. Then he was gone. The circle reformed. The wheezing, dying soldier dragged to the center. "The temple is wide open," Cowie moaned from somewhere in the dark. "It cannot be undone. Everyone will see the truth soon enough, and one of you, one lucky one, will see it first. Any volunteers?" "What truth are you talking about?" I asked, unsure where the courage to speak to this monster came from. "The ancient truth. The first truth. Older than mankind, older than time, older than light." One of the soldiers fired into the darkness nerves, making his trigger finger twitch. In the flash, we saw Cowie standing across the circle just for an instant. Flashlights swung to pin him, but they only caught the edge of his tattered cloak before he vanished again. "Enough with the cryptic nonsense," Cowie Anderson growled. "Either fight or go to hell. Haven't you realized, Anderson, that's where you're from? Welcome to the real world." Cowie materialized from the shadows, knife-raised mouth open in a sinister grin. He lunged at a soldier, driving the blade to the hilt into her shoulder. Her scream of pain and his mad laughter blended into a single, torturous sound. He moved too fast for us to aim at him long enough to risk a shot. Rodriguez leapt at the flickering figure, dropping his rifle and grabbing Cowie in a bear hug, hoping to immobilize him. The crazed soldier slipped out slick as an eel. With one impossibly strong hand, he seized the neck of the woman he'd wounded. Then he ran down the tunnel, laughing maniacally as he went. "You'll grow old down there with us, so. Old, older than light, older than light, older than—" A gunshot rang out. Cowie twitched, a spray of blood erupting from his shoulder. Somehow he kept running. The next bullet hit his lower back. He staggered, regaining his balance just as the third bullet struck dead center, tearing through his spine. He collapsed suddenly, a boneless sack of flesh. We sprinted toward his sprawled form. The woman he'd grabbed backed away, desperate to distance herself from the madman. Anderson strode to Cowie, standing over him, legs wide like an avenging god. Older than light, the vampire began to choke through the blood. "Fuck you, Cowie!" Anderson spat and shot him in the face. The next 10 minutes were a blur of activity I had no way to contribute to. The soldier whose throat had been slashed by the crazed vampire, a young private named Miller, was surrounded by medics. Despite their efforts, they couldn't stop the bleeding from the gash in his neck. He would die in minutes, and we all knew it. The woman Cowie had tried to abduct was in shock, but once her shoulder was bandaged, she seemed capable of continuing. I went to Rodriguez. "Are all vampires that bad?" I asked under my breath. "No," he replied. "They're always dangerous, but this was like nothing I've ever seen. He was just toying with us. If he hadn't gotten greedy and tried to take Ross, we might all be dead. If all vampires are like this now—" He trailed off. A shiver ran down my spine. Camp Gamma's still a long way off. he continued after a moment. With luck, A loud, urgent beep cut him off. Even in the dim light of the flashlights, I saw Rodriguez pale. Damn it. Oh, damn it. I recognized that sound from when I was captured. A chill ran down my spine. It was the high-pitched alarm of the spectrum. The hunt wasn't over. We've got to move! Anderson hissed. Someone moved to lift Miller, but he weakly shook his head, raising a hand in protest. Go, go, go! He gurgled, blood seeping through the makeshift bandages around his throat. Miller Rodriguez whispered. Instead of replying, the wounded soldier saluted with a trembling hand. Die well, Anderson said grimly. The group turned and sprinted down the tunnel. The spectrum wailed urgently as the things from below closed in. From the passage behind us, gunfire erupted, desperate flashes of muzzle fire abruptly cut off. Rodriguez made the sign of the cross as we ran. We reached a junction. Without even stopping to check the map, the lead soldier dove into the left branch, then cursed as her spectrum began shrieking louder. They're in that tunnel too. Go right. Something moved in the dim darkness fluid as a murderer's shadow on snow. The woman was yanked backward without time to scream. We sprinted into the right branch. Anderson fired a burst into the left as he ran. That's how they hunted us. We'd reach a fork, try to head toward Camp Gamma, only to be turned back by the spectrum's readings. The invisible things blocked our path, turning us back. Soon we were running downward into the earth away from our intended destination. Without warning, the concrete and steel-reinforced passages gave way to stone tunnels and caverns. We'd left the man-made defenses of this war and entered enemy territory. I find it hard to write about these events. They're the most chaotic and painful part of my journey, a blur of fear, gunfire, and exhaustion in my memory. Rodriguez sits beside me as I write. I look over and he's smiling reassuringly. He smiles a lot these days. Now we're down to 5. An unnamed soldier ahead of me suddenly vanished, yanked into the darkness by something horrific. Staring with raking fingers, I grabbed his rifle as it fell, firing blindly in the direction the thing from below had dragged him. I don't know if I hit anything. Finally, after what seemed like hours with burning lungs and cramping muscles, the spectrum fell silent. For reasons we couldn't guess, the pursuit had stopped, or at least eased. We halted, gasping, regrouping. We have to fight back. Anderson panted. They're driving us toward the pit. We have to get out or we're as good as dead. Why the hell do they want us down there? Rodriguez asked, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Before we could never get half that deep, and now they're herding us there at will. I don't know, but it can't be good. We have to fight back, Anderson repeated. No way. The war's changed. There are too many of them. Maybe those things could be held at Camp Alpha Hell, maybe even Beta or Gamma. But now we're just 5 and M's a civilian. We barely have enough firepower to take down one vampire, let alone fight our way out of the tunnels. So what do you propose we do? Anderson asked, turning to Rodriguez. You got a better idea. We keep going down straight into the pit. Face it, man, our chances of getting out of here alive are slim. If there's something down there these things are guarding, I want to see it before I go. Anderson stared at his friend silently for a moment. Finally, he shrugged. I don't care about what's in the pit. I care about vengeance. I'll stay here and collect a blood debt from these things and hope to rejoin our ranks. Anyone who wants to join me is welcome. Anyone who wants to go with Rodriguez and keep going down, be my guest. But I won't pretend to think it's not a fool's errand. The remaining soldiers shifted uncomfortably, then moved one by one to stand behind Anderson. Seized by a sudden impulse, I stood beside Rodriguez. He's right. The chances of getting back to the surface are near zero. Whatever's waiting in the pit, I want to see it, and then let the horror end forever. Anderson nodded at us. Good luck, he said reluctantly. When you get out, send reinforcements for us. We'll do the same for you if we get out first. Anderson's sudden naive optimism caught me off guard. From his expression, I could tell Rodriguez felt the same. Good luck to all of you, my friend said. He turned and walked down the dark tunnel, flashlight swaying. I nodded at the assembled soldiers and followed him. For a while we trudged silently, the sounds of Anderson and his group quickly cut off by distance and the winding passages. Fortunately, our spectrum remained silent. Perhaps the things from below were satisfied with our direction, or maybe they were busy with our teammates in the tunnels behind us. Suddenly, at least half an hour after we'd set out, Rodriguez's radio crackled. He picked it up with trembling fingers. The sound was full of static, distorted by the twisting tunnels. We could barely make out a voice, Anderson's, I realized with shock. Even through the static and distortion, he sounded desperate. "This is Anderson Squad B requesting immediate backup." "We're surrounded," Anderson Rodriguez whispered into the radio. "What's happening up there? I repeat, Squad B requesting backup." Anderson continued ignoring us or unable to hear our response. From the darkness behind us, desperate gunfire erupted, breaking the silence. Rodriguez cursed softly. Anderson's voice came again, more desperate. "My squad has pulled back. Can anyone hear me?" There was silence for at least half a minute, the only sound the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. No response came to our frantic attempts to reply. Finally, the radio crackled again. Rodriguez Anderson's voice came through. He sounded strange, not panicked or desperate like before, but awestruck and horrified. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't place his tone, but it unnerved me like nails on a chalkboard. "Rodriguez. I can see one. I can see one. I have a clear visual." "What can you see?" Rodriguez barked into the radio. "What can you see?" "Anderson." The reply came. "It's beautiful." We stood silent for a moment, unsure what to say, how to react. "It's beautiful." Finally, Rodriguez sighed, his head bowed in resignation. "There's nothing more we can do for them. Let's keep going. Don't keep them waiting down there." Slipping our rifles over our shoulders, we continued. The corridor widened broad as the main street of an ancient city. The floor became a paved road, hexagonal tiles, inlaid into the stone, forming incomprehensible geometric patterns. Many side tunnels led into the darkness, but we stayed on the main path, always downward. Rodriguez's spectrum began beeping incessantly, and we caught glimpses of the things from below. Every side chamber and tunnel held a fleeting glimpse of murderous razor smile shapes and nightmare forms. Yet this time we didn't flee. They weren't hunting us anymore. They were welcoming us. And finally, we arrived. The bottom of the pit of sorrow. The temple. I look up as I write these words, staring straight at Rodriguez. He doesn't speak, but once again he smiles reassuringly, though the reason for his joy confounds me. It gives me the will to continue. We stepped into a colossal cavern, its walls soaring upward, the ceiling so high it was lost in shadow. No more side tunnels, no more endless descent. This was it, the bottom of the pit, the heart of whatever was happening underground. It all stemmed from here. Rodriguez cursed softly under his breath as he saw what awaited us. I gasped, unable to hold it back. The cavern was dominated by a massive temple carved from the cold stone itself. Jagged spires soared upward, only half visible in the dim torchlight. Shadowed windows gaped hungry and ominous. Arches and domes stretched into the darkness. Yet it wasn't the temple's scale that stopped us, nor the countless things from below. Pale shadows promising slaughter held back by some unknowable command. It was the unmistakable inhumanity of the temple. Every stone was flawless, every arch and dome perfect, and yet it was grotesque. It was too perfect. It was built in a style no human mind could ever have conceived, and that horrified us. Every piece of stone in its ancient mass was cut with geometric precision that should have been impossible, as if the stones themselves mocked the laws of nature. It had beauty, but only so it could torture and twist it into shapes it should never have been. "This place is ancient," Rodriguez whispered. "Too ancient." "Older than light," I replied, unsure where those words came from. My friend glanced at me and swallowed audibly, then continued his words, escaping in a breathless whisper. "Let's keep moving. They're watching us." Looking down, I saw that ahead the temple was dominated by a massive arched gateway covered in symbols and reliefs that I shudder to recall. I couldn't see what waited within the darkness, was too deep, too absolute. But there was something just beyond it. A hint of movement, a suggestion of a vast obscured shape. That was all we saw, something waiting for us that had been waiting since the beginning of humanity or the earth, or perhaps since the beginning of time itself. Older than light. Around us, the things from below bowed. The slaughter became submissive. The darkness knelt before a darkness older than violence and shadow and fear, bowing to something even older, deeper than those very concepts. The first truth. We stopped. Our journey into these depths was to see exactly this, but at the threshold we halted. A sound from behind made us turn. There was movement in the main tunnel we'd come from, the sound of shuffling footsteps. Rodriguez raised his rifle. The darkness shifted and a lone figure emerged. It wore the tattered remnants of a uniform, a pistol holstered at its waist. Even bloodied and wounded, it looked almost familiar, almost like Anderson. Rodriguez gasped. Our old teammate smiled in the dim light, a twitching smile that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a pleasant smile, the same kind Cowie had given us as he ran through the tunnels, dragging his helpless prey behind him. "Hello, Rodriguez," Anderson said. Rodriguez stepped forward, not lowering his rifle. "You okay?" Anderson laughed, a high, crazed sound. "More than okay. I've seen it, Rodriguez. I've seen it. Seen what the truth, the ancient truth, the first truth." Cowie was right. "Damn, it's beautiful. It's beautiful." He took another step toward us, then another. My rifle came up, though I barely knew how to use it. "Stay right there," Rodriguez warned. "They're in your head. I'm me. I've known you for years. You have to fight them." Anderson stopped, then laughed again, but this time I heard something else behind the sound. Pain, regret. I can't fight it, Rodriguez. Can't fight the truth, can't fight the truth." Without warning, he lunged forward fast, as a snake screaming in bloodlust and pain. Rodriguez hesitated for just a second. He froze. It was too much for him. The horrors we'd endured, the sight of the godless temple, and now one of his old teammates returned from the dead, craving our blood. For a split second he held his fire, and then Anderson was on us. There was none of the slinking darkness Cowie had used. Anderson was a whirlwind of claws and teeth, too fast to be human. My rifle was wrenched from my hands. A sledgehammer-like punch slammed into my teeth. I tasted blood. Rodriguez grabbed Anderson from behind, throwing him to the ground. The crazed soldier writhed like some grotesque insect, instantly back on his feet, sinking his teeth into his opponent's shoulder. Rodriguez screamed. Around us, the nightmare shapes on flayed skin crept closer, smiling with black ice teeth. I staggered to my feet, throwing a wild punch that caught Anderson on the side of the head. He turned to me with a snarl, slipping under my second swing and grabbing my throat from behind. I choked the world, turning gray. "Stop, Anderson!" I heard Rodriguez shout from somewhere far away, his voice faint, distant. An urge to sleep overwhelmed me. The shadows crept closer. "Your father and his father gave their lives to fight these things," Rodriguez was shouting. "Fight them. You're still in there." The iron grip on my throat loosened slightly. I dragged a ragged breath into my burning lungs. "Can't fight the truth," Anderson whispered somewhere behind me. "Can't fight the truth. The first truth, older than mankind, older than time, older than light." "You know that's nonsense," Rodriguez said, looking at the madman over my shoulder. "You can fight it. You can. Please." The grip on my throat weakened a little more. Can't fight it." A pained whisper sounded behind me. A drop of something fell on my shoulder tears. I can't fight the truth. A deafening gunshot rang out behind me. I felt the heat of the bullet. Something red and hot sprayed across me. I turned. Anderson had drawn his pistol and shot himself in the head. Rodriguez staggered forward, catching me as I fell. He looked down at his dead friend, then made the sign of the cross. The shadows watched in mocking silence. Finally, Rodriguez turned away. "Let's finish this. I'm tired." We turned, weapons pressed to our chests, ignoring the creeping shadows drawing closer. and strode into the dark gateway of the temple. At first, we saw nothing. The darkness enveloped us completely. I could only hear Rodriguez beside me breathing heavily as we advanced. At first, we saw nothing, and then the darkness parted, and we saw everything. "My God," Rodriguez whispered beside me. "It's horrific." "It's beautiful," I replied, smiling to myself. I don't know how long the climb back from the pit took. Time had lost all meaning. A day, a year, a century, it was all the same in the end. Now I live in the tunnels beneath the city. Sometimes I come close to the surface, just inches from people who have no idea I'm there. I hear them, their supposedly private conversations, the cries of children, the deep, calm breathing of the sleeping. I hear it all, and no one ever hears me. I return to my lair after each journey, a small hole beneath the railway system. Rodriguez waits for me there. He's still smiling. He's been smiling since I returned from the pit, since I killed him. I gouged out his eyes. He couldn't see the truth when it was right in front of him. I carved his mouth into a twitching smile. With the truth in his hands, he screamed and cursed and blasphemed. So I killed him. He hasn't said much since, but he's a much better listener now. I'll need a companion down here in the dark. I intend to stay here for life, to pass away in the darkness beneath this false world. Older than mankind, older than time, older than light.